In this video, we're going to be showing you 7 reasons why your vertical content sucks and also how to fix them. Because listen, if you're shooting vertical content, you got to have some things in mind. You can't show up to a film shoot, turn your camera sideways, and expect your footage to be perfect. These 7 things you can do will instantly improve your vertical filmmaking, and your footage will stand out from all the rest. And as much as we don't like to admit it, 80% of content and media consumed on a daily basis is viewed on a smartphone. TikTok has now been downloaded by 3 billion people, which is over 40% of the Earth's population, and over 1 billion people view TikTok every single month. That's almost 15% of the world's population. And if you're trying to reach that audience with videos that look like this, you are going to get left behind. So the first question you need to ask yourself is, what is my end goal? Or an even better question to ask is, do I even need to film vertically for this? And the reason I make a point about this is because you don't want to film vertical unless it's for a purpose. I mean, you can technically crop into a 16:9 video to create a vertical video, but if you shoot something vertical and try to make it a 16:9, it's almost impossible. And on top of that, cropping into an image will immediately reduce the quality. So if I go into a shoot knowing that I'm shooting something for social media, it's easy to just shoot vertically. But sometimes you don't really know where your footage is going to go. You might be doing this for a local business and they say that they want to use it for social media, but what they really mean is that they want to use it for their main website video. So before you film anything vertically, you want to make sure that you aren't shooting vertical for no reason. So determine your end goal and then you'll know exactly how to film. For example, with this video, we didn't know if we wanted to shoot it horizontal or vertical because we knew it was going to end up on YouTube, but we decided like 10 minutes ago that we're actually going to shoot the whole thing vertical to make a point, which looks really good if you're viewing it on your iPhone. And if you're viewing it on your computer, it might look kind of weird. So the second reason your vertical content might suck is because you have no stability. The best way to get smooth vertical content is by physically turning your camera sideways. Whenever you're holding it like this, it might not seem the most practical, but once you do some research, you'll learn that there are actually accessories that they make to make it super easy and simple to film vertically. And one of the best accessories that you can buy is a battery grip. You can film without one, but having this extra grip whenever you rotate your camera makes a huge difference. If I'm filming vertically, handheld, I use this all the time. I would also suggest buying a camera cage for your camera as well. The reason we recommend this is because you're then able to put handles and grips all around your camera, any direction, to give you more stable handheld footage. You can take the handles and put them on the top and the bottom so that whenever you rotate your camera, you now have a vertical filming handheld rig. These accessories aren't necessary to create vertical content, but like with any piece of filmmaking gear, they greatly aid to the stability of the shot. Just a few months ago, Matt went on a trip with Untitled Worship, and his job was to get social content for their band. So he actually needed a solution because he didn't want to just rotate the camera back and forth, and he wanted a way to be able to shoot pictures horizontally and video vertically. So he set it up where he had the small rig cage around the camera and a handle mounted to the left side for video, and he had his flash on top for whenever he was taking photos of the band on stage. This way, whenever he was capturing photos, he held the camera normally, and then whenever he needed to capture video, he simply rotated the camera to the right and used the handle for a better grip. This allowed him to hold the camera and be able to zoom in and out with his 24-70 for video and for photos. And if you want to stand out from all other people shooting vertical content, put your camera on a gimbal. Getting those buttery smooth shots with vertical videos is essential to creating social media content that stands out. If you have a camera cage, you can easily screw the mounting plate to the side of the camera and place that on your gimbal. But even if you don't have a camera cage, you can purchase an L bracket on Amazon for about $30. And this allows you to have those mounting options on the side of your camera for vertical shooting. Again, these things aren't necessary to have, but they do make a huge difference. Step number 3 is one of the most common reasons why your vertical content doesn't look good, and that's because you are not using a longer lens. And no, I don't mean slap a 500mm on your camera and shoot sideways. All I mean is don't shoot super wide. Whenever you're shooting at something like 20mm and you're shooting horizontally, the left and right edges of the frame start to get distorted, and this is somewhat of a normal look and something that we're used to. However, whenever you're shooting vertically, now it's not the sides that are becoming distorted, but it's the top and bottom of the frame. and it's not a look that people are too familiar with, and it even looks worse if you're filming someone's face and their features are all distorted and it looks terrible.
Gosh, is it really this close?
On top of that, if you're shooting a subject, people don't mind seeing a wide-angle shot and seeing extra space on the left and the right. But if you're filming vertically, that extra space is nothing but sky and ground, and your subject looks really tiny and it looks strange. I found that anywhere from 40 to 70 millimeters just looks perfect. Shooting at 24 millimeters or less just stretches the top and bottom of your footage and makes it look more like it was shot on a cell phone. I mean, seriously, spot the difference. Avoid this simply by just staying around 50 millimeters or so, because it's a nice focal length that allows you to not have a weird distance from your subject, but also compresses the background, makes your footage look nice, intentional, and cinematic. Step number 4 is to be mindful of what you are shooting. When shooting vertically, you have much less room to work with from left to right. And you'll notice very quickly that trying to track a moving subject is a little bit more difficult and takes more practice. And it's important to know what you're filming and almost be able to predict the movement of your subject before they make a move. Following your subject like this just looks awful, and it clearly communicates that you weren't prepared for the shot. So try to avoid this at all cost. It took me several tries to get this shot just right as the Tesla passed by. I had to keep doing it over and over again because I couldn't get it right the first time. One thing I found extremely helpful is that I realized having a better grip on my camera with autofocus allowed me to have a little bit better idea of my surroundings. I found myself looking up from the screen a good bit while filming to get an overall idea of the scene, which translated to capturing better content and being more accurate with my movements. In some older videos where I was paying so much attention to my screen and moving from subject to subject, I would accidentally pan too far or cut off someone's head. So having a better grip and having autofocus allowed me to be more fluid with my movements and look up a good bit. Again, this takes practice, but I actually found myself looking at the screen of my camera maybe like 65% of the time instead of the whole time like this. And you also need to remember that composition is still important even when you're shooting vertically. Rule of thirds, foreground depth, it's all still there and it's important pieces of your footage. You just need to think about it a little bit differently because you're now in a vertical field. With the rule of thirds, you're going to want to place important points on the top and bottom lines of your grid. It's much harder to place someone at an intersecting point in the frame like you would typically do when shooting horizontal, but I would say with vertical video, center of the frame is going to look the best. So try to keep your horizon lines on either the top or preferably the bottom grid line. You also don't want the subject's head directly in the middle of the frame because then you'll have way too much headroom, like this. So the general rule of thumb is that your subject is in the middle, close to the top grid line, and your horizon is on the bottom grid line. This is what I have found looks the best whenever you shoot vertical content, and it's also super important to use the foreground to your advantage. You can pan between subjects like you would normally, except instead of your foreground and background being seen more left to right, you'll notice that you can pull focus with your subject being on the bottom half of your image and then the other subject being on the top half of your image. This is just a really good way to keep your vertical footage engaging and also intentional. The more you shoot vertically, the more you'll start to see what works best for you, and it just might take a little bit of practice, but composition is still very important. Number 6 is to shoot for the edit, which means to keep your edit in mind as you're filming. Editing for social content is a completely different ball game than editing for something like YouTube. Shooting for the edit means to have an idea of how you're going to piece your footage together to make it as entertaining as possible. Moving from transitions, zooming in and out, using lights, there's all kinds of ways to make your edit creative with vertical content. But not all of that can be thought of after you have filmed it. So this needs to be a constant thought in your mind whenever you're filming. One really cool way to create engaging social content in a vertical sequence is by stacking footage and using that vertical space to your advantage. So shoot vertical footage, but also maybe show horizontal footage and stack it in your sequence. You can stack 2 or more shots like this, and it's still really engaging to your audience. Or you can even have one shot in the middle of the frame like this and blur out the edges, or you can even have the same shot duplicated on top of each other like this. I mean, really anything you can do to make your content more engaging and just take advantage of your vertical space. But just remember, as you are filming your vertical content, you need to have your edit in mind and create everything you need to create while filming. Everyone seems to want to know the answer to this question, and that is, what aspect ratio do I use? And the answer to that is
Unfortunately, every single social media platform has a different format for video sharing, and so it's important to keep in mind when filming your content that YouTube vertical content, as well as TikTok and Instagram stories, operate at a 9:16 ratio, or a 1080 by 1920. This is just a rotated version of your standard 1920 by 1080 or 16:9 ratio. The good thing is all you really have to do is reverse the dimensions of whatever resolution you want. So if you're wanting a 4K vertical sequence, normally that would be a 3840 by 2160, and to make it vertical, we simply switch the numbers. Now it's a 2160 by 3840. For 1080p, it's exactly the same thing. 1920 by 1080, we simply reverse it to a 1080 by 1920. Where it gets just a little bit tricky is whenever you're creating content for both TikTok and Instagram, because Instagram previews your Reels content in a 1080 by 1350, or a 4:5 ratio, until you click on it. Then it opens up into a 9:16. This can get confusing if you're trying to add captions to the bottom of your video, which we have had to learn the hard way, as the words might get cut off at the bottom when viewing a reel or video on your feed, and then whenever you click on it, maybe the words still might get covered up by the post captions, and there really isn't a perfect way to solve this other than just testing and exporting, and honestly, probably having the captions just in the middle of your video or slightly above where you think they should be. So when you're creating your sequence in Premiere Pro or whatever editor you're using, oh come on. Hey, I'll call you right back. Bye. So when you're creating your sequence in Premiere Pro or whatever editor you're using, just change the sequence settings to match the social media platform that you're using, and you simply do this by just reversing the dimensions.
So guys, I hope this video has been helpful and shed some light on how to achieve better vertical videos and create cinematic content that is both engaging and formatted correctly for social media. Again, the future of entertainment is rapidly changing, and showcasing media in a vertical format for platforms like TikTok and Instagram is definitely the way of the future, as more and more people are using their phones to consume media. And if you're a filmmaker who's starting to get into capturing content for social media, or even just now tapping into the creative world itself, learning how to use your equipment is a huge part of developing your craft and bringing your skills to the next level. Learning right here on YouTube is great, until you start to notice that everyone is kind of telling you different opinions and how to create different things, because after all, it is an art and everyone has their own way of doing that. That's why at tomorrowsfilmmakers.com, we have over 1,200 video lessons and over 120 hours of content taught by professionals in the industry. This way you can learn the best from the best. We have lessons on every single aspect of filming you can possibly imagine, all for only $97. If you'd like to learn more about filmmaking, click the link below and head on over to tomorrowsfilmmakers.com to learn all the skills that you need to succeed.